Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Prospero.ai stock market live streams. It is a Monday here, February 23rd, and the stock market is in the red as we are beginning the stream here today. If anybody else is tuning in from the Northeast, we are snow covered here again. Blizzard conditions where I'm at in Bergen County, New Jersey. So the streaming situation is again a little bit messed up here today. So please have patience, everybody, if you hear any dogs barking or anything going on in the background. But we will get into all of the good topics in just a minute. See, JC is tuning in already with the snow emoji. Yes, you are ahead of the game there. We are still having the streaming issue with X. So let me quickly do a little housekeeping and share the stream on X. How did I do this last time now? I think I went directly to Twitter. But be sure to like the stream, everybody, as you're getting on in here today. Let me just make sure our Twitter viewers can find the action here, and then we will get through a rundown of the topics. Here we go. Prospero.ai stock market live. All right, we should be good to go. So, without further ado, let's take a look at how the XLI, XLK, QQQ, and SPY are doing here today. We are seeing the QQQ down almost at 1.5%, Russell down over 2%, Dow Jones and SPY also down over 1%. So, a very, very red day overall here as we are beginning. It looks like the Prospero signals had been forecasting that as well, with the QQQ now at 3. So that's a little bit of a change. It was at 4 prior to that, and the SPY maintaining its 0 flat line. The XLK is at 24, and the XLI is at 35. All of these metrics for net options sentiment. So everything is down in the dumps as we are beginning. We are going to start off with a big update in the macro. So we got a Supreme Court ruling against the Trump tariffs last week, and we got some responses by him setting some global tariff numbers, throwing them out there at 10% level and a 15% level. It seems like nobody knows what's going on now with these tariffs. So how would refunds be processed? Are these new tariffs going to be implemented? What's going to be the result of this? How is it going to affect the portfolios? It looks like as of right now, it is just added uncertainty. So that's maybe why we're seeing the market in the red here today. But we will go through all of that. Mario is in the stream as well, saying morning from Mexico. Good morning, Mario. Mario, you're probably having a lot warmer weather than I here this morning. We got about 18 inches of snow where I'm at today. We are also going to be going through NVIDIA earnings, which is set to be happening later this week. Another busy earnings week. So we were losing AMD in the Prospero signals, and it's actually been looking more like a better short recently than long. And NVIDIA, I took a peek at them today. Their net option sentiment is also dropping down as well. It was in the 50s. So what are we thinking about NVIDIA before their earnings, and how is that going to affect the market one way or the other? We have Berkshire Hathaway reporting this Saturday, one of the interesting companies that does not report during the week. They are now sitting on an all-time high cash level, which has been kind of the trend here for quarter after quarter after quarter. They've been hitting new all-time high after all-time high for their cash. So we shall see what they decide to say. This is the first official earnings report that's not going to include the GOAT Warren Buffett at it. So and there's another stat I have to share about just the massive amount of cash they're sitting on and what they could do with it if they chose to. We also get into two stocks moving in very opposite directions, not just today, but for the recent history. We have Eli Lilly going up, and we have Novo Nordisk going down. So Eli Lilly announced a new innovation in the way that they will be able to deliver their obesity drug Zepbound to consumers, and Novo Nordisk disappointing results of their Wegovy versus Eli Lilly's. So Novo Nordisk was down about 15%. We could take a peek at them, see how they're doing now, if they're still down about that much. NVO is down now over 16% today. while Eli Lilly is up over 4% today. And even in a very weak market, Eli Lilly is able to be up in the green right now. I want to dig into the health sector a little bit more here on the stream also. It would seem like with all the uncertainty going on, health tends to be a little bit more value oriented, and I feel like a little bit more projectable because you know people are going to be spending on it. So is that a sector that will come into being one of the more bullish ones here as the uncertainty is rising? Then we have a few more companies. If anybody also has any questions, concerns, comments, feel free to comment them in the chat. If anybody's new watching, please follow on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube. I'm about to go through a list of some companies reporting this week or set to report. But if I don't say any, you could just leave them in the comments. We have Home Depot, AMC, Salesforce, Snowflake, Block, and CoreWeave, besides the NVIDIA and what else did I say? NVIDIA and Berkshire Hathaway that we already mentioned. We have a comment in the chat from JC Anecdote. I've sold to both Lilly and Novo. Lilly usually had their stuff together. Novo usually did not. So JC, you have a little bit more faith in the management team of Eli Lilly than Novo Nordisk, it sounds like. Interesting. Yeah, a little side point to add, but all data is good data, right? If nobody saw, we recently posted a video of the final boss of data collection. It was a story that George shared on the stream last week about data collection of toilet flushing in a hospital. So if you haven't seen that story yet, you can check it out on YouTube, TikTok, or Instagram. But it's a funny clip, and yeah, we are in peak data collection, it seems like, right now. All data is good data. A couple more topics to go through on our rundown. Gold has now overtaken the US dollar as the largest global reserve asset when measuring foreign held US treasuries. So very, very interesting shift here. And we've noticed the dollar weakening. Obviously, gold has been strengthening. Seems like very, very, it seems like it's happening quicker than people would anticipate. And maybe that's adding to the volatility in the markets that we're seeing. So will this trend even continue more so? Or will we see the US dollar regain its leading position? And if not, what does that mean for how, USA, not only the dollar, but assets are valued around the world and valued as a whole? Um, yeah, it seems like a lot of shifting sands going on. Oh, how do I say this name? LAU. Lao Duolingo Thursday earning thoughts. Woo, Duolingo has been one of those stocks that has been seeming to have no floor. Let's take a peek at Duolingo. I will add them to the list to go through when George gets in here. Ooh, down over 6% today, now at about $105 per share. They're now trading below their IPO price, which was almost 5 years ago. And this is after rising to all-time highs towards the end or the middle of 2025. Wow, they have had quite the fall since then. They're one of those stocks that the AI apocalypse has really befallen them. The software stocks seem to have no love in the markets right now, but I will add Duolingo to our list here. All right, so another topic we want to discuss here is OpenAI projecting a roughly 85% CAGR over the next 5 years through 2030. And this is a follow-up on the story we talked about how they're currently being valued between them and Meta, which is actually a video we posted this morning on all the channels. But projecting revenue of 280 billion in 2030. So massive growth going on there, and it can show you why they are getting that 800 plus billion-dollar market cap versus the 1.6 trillion that Meta has, with the difference in current revenues. Yeah, I got the dogs going on in the background. Sorry, guys. I hope it's not too much of a disruption. But when George gets in here, I'll be able to mute myself more, so he'll do more of the talking. Last but not least, final story, Google dominance. It seems like Google itself is like the perfect tech ETF. They have leading AI technology. They have full self-driving with Waymo. They have robotics. They have investment in SpaceX, so they have space exposure. They are like the leading ads industry, them and Meta. They have Google Cloud. So all you could want in the tech industry, they seem to like house it under their roof. And also, I think a big differentiator with their company, and it's one of the things that we rag on Apple for with these streams, is there's a lack of innovation. It seems like Google really internally develops a lot of these different sectors of their business. So you got to believe whatever kind of turn the tech industry takes, Google has been able to innovate within it and expand their business. So you got to believe in them, like whatever the next turn is going to be, they're going to be able to capitalize on it versus being disrupted by it, I'd imagine, which gives them a nice base of confidence amongst their investors. So if we have time today, we will get to that at the end here. We didn't have a lot of weekly Discord questions to bring up on the stream. The Supreme Court was the only new one I saw in there, the ruling on there. So that will be discussed in the beginning. So nothing to get to at the end there. Now let's take a look around the markets, see how things are moving here today before George joins us in, hopefully soon. Wow, we have a lot of stuff making very big moves here. A lot of the highest growth players, which have been kind of falling in 2026 so far, are falling more today. I think I saw the nuclear stocks are going down quite a bit here. SMR down 8% now, over 8%. LEU down over 4%. I think I saw a popular retail name, SoFi, down over 7% now. Shopify down over 7%. Lemonade down over 6%. Adobe, one of those software stocks that has no floor, down almost 5% now and hitting not a 52-week low, but a 5-year low for that company. Let's check out the Mag 7. Apple is actually in the green right now, but Amazon red, Google red, Meta red, Microsoft red, Tesla red. And these are not just slight reds. We have Microsoft down almost 3%. We have Tesla down over 3%. Amazon down close to 3%. So moving big here. Let's check out NVIDIA. NVIDIA is currently in the green as well. So NVIDIA and Apple hanging on to green ever so slightly here. AMD is also in the red now, below $200 per share. This guy said, is there a reason why Goog stock has an upside of 90 and Google 78? Interesting question. To be honest, I'm not sure on the answer of that, other than, there's different readings in the options chains that are going on. But I'll let George speak about that more in detail, because they should honestly track one another almost one for one. So unless there's something specific going on, it'll be interesting to hear the answer of why there would be such a difference there. So I will save that and I will write it down for when George is here. So we'll get to that right away too, because that should be a quick answer. All right, I got that. Standard deviation loves the question. By the way, guys, while we're just waiting here, it's so easy. Just drop a like on the streams if you're excited for the topics when we get into them in detail. It's really good for pushing the streams on YouTube, on Twitter. When you're liking it up, the algos love to boost it and share it with more people. So very easy. Just a click of the button really helps us out. So I would appreciate it very much so. Let's take a look at Bitcoin as well. Oh, and a stock I want to follow up and check out actually in the Prospero signals is BMNR, because people were highlighting it last week as a 100 net options sentiment player. So take a peek back at that. Bitcoin is actually in the green right now, but I feel like with a lot of the times with Bitcoin, it prices in the Monday move on Sunday, since it's like one of the only things that's open for trading. So it was down yesterday, so that could be a little bit of the effect there of why it's in the green right now. Let's take a look at BMNR in Prospero. For those that don't know, BMNR is kind of like the MicroStrategy of Ethereum. And you have Tom Lee, who's the head of BMNR, and Michael Saylor of MSTR. So it wasn't the net options, I misspoke. It was the upside, which still is pinned at 100. So it has had a 100 upside breakout level since February 17th here. So now almost a week of being pinned at that level. We didn't look at it in how it's performing today. I imagine it's down with how the market is moving here. Let's take a look. Yeah, BMR down 5%. So Seems like nothing is safe today in the markets with the movements we are seeing. What is the largest movers? NVO is actually Novo Nordisk is down the most, one of the biggest movers in the market, down 16%. So yeah, that's the most weakness there. You have a lot of cybersecurity stocks down as well. I think an update with Claude over the weekend or towards the end of last week really affected a lot of these companies. I see CrowdStrike, popular name, down almost 10% here today. CrowdStrike is now down 25% year to date in 2026. So no love for CrowdStrike. I see Zscaler down as well, over 9% today, and down 36% year to date. Wow. Hello, George. Welcome to the stream. We were just going through some of the biggest movers here today, and the biggest movers are mostly in the red as we are opening up here. Obviously, so many headlines to talk about that are affecting the markets, all being tracked in the Prospero signals as we look through QQQ and SPY, both at very low levels. The XLK for net option sentiment at 19, XLI at 32. And it's got to be the Supreme Court ruling that ultimately led to such a red day today, correct? And then the response from Trump. So for those that haven't heard, the Supreme Court struck down the tariffs. Now, how this is all going to play out still, I feel like is very uncertain with, our country's going to get refunded? What happens to the money that was already collected? How does it affect the policy of the current government? What they were planning to do with all of that, all of those funds. But then also the response from Trump of immediately saying he's going to put a 10% global tariff in replace of it, and then he upped it to 15% on Saturday. And if we all remember last April, what the tariff headlines did for the market and how quickly they reacted, and it seems like we're having a round two of that on top of all the other stuff. And that actually back in last April, I feel like the AI hype and excitement was at like a peak, and now we're having a lack of that. So it's all coming together right now, and we're seeing a lot of stocks in the red here today. But what's your breakdown of the current market and the headlines we're seeing?
I feel like I blinked and the market was like I saw it this morning. I was like, I should have gone a little more short. I mean, we were kind of expecting it. Like we weren't really fooled by the Friday rally, especially what was happening over the weekend. But yeah, I mean, we have seen it before. And like, we know the market doesn't like a few things that are going on right now. We know that it doesn't like uncertainty and we know that it doesn't like tariffs, right? So that's a big draft.
Yeah, so do you have any kind of lean on how you think this is all going to play out, or is the confusion it's causing, which maybe you have as well, like you're feeling that as much as anybody, and that's why everybody's positioning so, they're not taking any risk because nobody knows what's going on really. There's like, how is this all going to play out?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what we're seeing today, right? We're seeing a very nervous market.
So we had a question just before you got in here from this guy. He noticed that Google stock, well, Goog versus Google and the tickers were showing different upside metrics of 90 and 78. And he was curious on, since they're basically the same thing, why would there be a difference in the upside for both? What would be the cause?
That's a question for whoever trades those options, right? Like I don't think there's going to be much of a difference in, right? Remember, there's three components to upside. There's analyst ratings, price targets, price momentum factors, and options, long-term options metrics. And the price targets are going to be similar. The price action is going to be similar. So what's the remainder? For whatever reason, people are pricing options contracts differently. And what that could be is like one could just be, Goog could just be the preferred way to trade options, right? If you want to, you could prefer Goog. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're more bullish on Goog than Google. It just means that for whatever reason, institutions favor trading options on Goog. So you'd have to ask them. We're just picking up the fact that relationship exists.
So happy to get an answer for this guy there. Want to spin to Nvidia earnings this week, a massive catalyst in the markets potentially. Although it does seem like earnings are kind of taking a back seat these days to everything that's going on. But we have noticed recently how AMD was losing its bullishness in the Prospero signals and actually became a short recently, more so than even a bull, and its signals are still down in the dumps today. I checked out Nvidia. Its net option sentiment is now in the 50s levels. How are you feeling heading into Nvidia earnings? Is this the um, weakest it's ever looked in recent quarters heading into an earnings report? And how could it move the markets one way or the other when it reports this week?
Will be interesting to see um, how AMD reacts to NVIDIA earnings. I mean, I think it's probably not. I would be happy to hold AMD through that earnings, because if NVIDIA reports bad earnings, I think that will also be bad for AMD. But if NVIDIA reports good earnings, I'm not sure if that'll be good or bad, especially if those earnings suggest um, a more robust ongoing market share situation, or a new product that might put them further ahead of AMD. Anything, especially as it relates to cost savings per token or anything like that, puts AMD in some risky position. But I mean, it's kind of interesting. We've never seen AMD have signals this bad. So I don't know what's going on, but the market's become pretty bearish on it.
I did see a wild headline out of Jensen, like they're developing a chip that's like never been seen before, and like it's gonna replace all chips or whatever. So maybe there's some level of truth to it where there really is like a next gen chip he's about to drop on the world that um, nobody can compete with. Do you think there's any kind of expectation of that, or like something where Nvidia would leapfrog so far ahead of AMD again that they looked like they were far behind?
I mean, just another, yeah, I mean, of course. Yeah, I mean, I think maybe that's where the bearishness is coming from. Maybe people are expecting that announcement.
So we got another question in the chat from Bud. He's asking, how do you use VIX as a market buy or sell macro signal? Some options gurus have a VIX spike buy indicator.
I mean, a spike in the VIX normally means that the market is going down. I mean, what that could mean, I would think, is actually that um that's their indication to start trading volatility, because in times of unsure markets, it's way easier to trade volatility and way less risky, especially if like you typically trade long. A lot of people might prefer to trade vol instead of going short. Um, so that could be what it is, because the nice thing about trading vol as opposed to going short is on days um when the market sharply turns, that's obviously something that volatility, because that is volatility, is going to get punished less than, say, if you're short a bunch of stuff. So there is that added benefit that on a quick swing, um, your shorts can really get burned and your vol positions are not really going to get burned as much. But I would add to that, anytime you find yourself like, it's always good to make more sense of the market, but like, I'd say anytime you find yourself like wondering about a concept like that, like I would say that's also a sign that you need to um fill in a lot more of your education. Like I'm always happy to give these kind of answers. But it's a kind of sign that I think you need to, fill in a lot of the in between before you start thinking about actually executing trades like that yourself. I mean, you could always like, there's nothing better than a trial by fire. If you think the market's going down and you want to start like paper trading, volatility, um, I'd say by all means try that. But I wouldn't do that with live dollars um, until you kind of can fill in and make sense of a lot of what I just said for yourself.
So I'm interested to hear your response for the next question in the chat from NW. Since AI uses an incredible amount of water, is there value in getting in on this utility? And I'm wondering your response because like water is probably the most like common resource on Earth. So like, can you trade a resource like that? I feel like its price isn't going to move much, even if it's used more. I don't even know a way to trade water, but yeah, what are your thoughts there?
I've been hearing about I've been hearing for a long time about billionaires like buying up water reserves and that being like the new best like investment. I don't really know how to get exposure to that. Um, but yes, being long water is definitely a good macro idea. Yeah, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that like I don't know enough about um, you know, whether it's like water rights or water reserves or like I don't really know how to advise people on that. Maybe that's something to do a little more research on. That's more what I'm talking about. Like I know there's ways to get exposure to water. I'm not necessarily sure which is the best way to get exposure, is what I'm saying.
So we have Berkshire earnings this Saturday. It's going to be the first earnings report without Buffett at the helm. They are now sitting on $382 billion of cash at all-time highs, and that's enough to buy 480 companies out of the S&P 500's 500 companies. So a massive amount of cash, and the cash pile just keeps on growing. Do you have any expectations for Berkshire? Any wild headlines possibly? Does the new CEO want to make an impact in his first true earnings report? Uh, what are your thoughts?
It'd be really funny if the new like, Buffett kind of just like goes out there and like does his little like, he does his report and he's like, it would be really funny if like the new guy, I don't know much about the new guy, but I imagine he's like very much in the mold of Buffett. But it'd be really funny if he came out like Jensen Wong style. He had his like leather jacket. Like he was putting on like an exciting show about Berkshire. Yeah, I don't think that's happening, but I do think what people are really going to be looking for um, is Buffett's always teaching lessons, right? And I mean, part of the lessons are just like a little bit of like these are lessons, but some of it is like showing off like kind of his like unique perspective on the market. And there's like two components to that. The first is like some of those things might make sense immediately, right? But like the thing about Buffett is like sometimes like where's like Oxy at now? Oh, it's still in about. Oh no, it went down. Yeah. So I think he was buying when it was lower. I don't know if that's the best example, but it might prove, higher. It's up only like 6% in the last year, but I do think he was buying at lower levels. Some things like that need time to prove that you were smart about, right? So it's those are going to be the two ways. What's the new guy's name? Is it Greg?
Mm-hmm. Greg Abel.
I was going to say a Beal, but Abel. um, I always think of like I always think of the character cousin Greg on on Succession. Um, so he's going to be kind of judged immediately on that. I feel like are there insights, but I also think that some of it is going to like prove out over time. Like, are the things he expects to happen in the markets, are the bets he's going to make, um, are they going to pan out in the same way? And like, when we talk about Apple and Tim Cook, I think that that's a really important, like how the stock is going to be valued is going to be very much based on that assessment, right? Is is he a steward, right? And I would call like Tim Cook like more of a steward, right? He hasn't, and we kind of critique it for him. He doesn't have the same like I've got this innovation, next innovation, this and that, and like even some of the projects we talk about all the time that he has done, he's like killed because they haven't reached fruition, right? That's what I think of as more of like a steward, and he is a good like a steward in the sense of like Apple hasn't fallen off a cliff, right? And I think that that's probably a lot of the reason that Jobs picked him because he was less of a risk, right? A lot of the time for a successor, you just want to be like, okay, I just want to make sure, like, it's kind of funny that this is the case, but a lot of people who take risks understand risk frameworks only in themselves, and they don't necessarily, it's kind of funny, trust other people that take big risks. They'd much rather hand it off to someone that's safer because they want to protect what they've built instead of something that might, lose it in 5 or 10 years because they've taken the wrong risks, right? I think that's what people are going to be seeing, right? Is Greg, cousin Greg, maybe we'll start calling him that until he's actually any good, until he proves us that. Is cousin Greg going to be any good? Or is he going to make just like decent returns, right? Where we're like, okay, this guy's okay, he's not losing money, but he's playing it safe. Like, or is he going to have the same big win after big win that Buffett does over time, right? Obviously, a lot of big wins that Buffett has is a function of him just buying, right? And I don't know what his average price is on Oxy, but I did see it. It did go as low as like 38. In December it was at 40. I don't know what his. I have a confession to make, everyone. I did switch to Claude from Perplexity. I've been using it more. Like, Claude's pretty sick. I got to put in our earnings question into Claude sooner or later, but I'm going to ask it. What is? I've used 90% of my session limit. I think I'm going to need to buy more. What is a session limit? I think I'm going to need to pay them more. Maybe even cancel my Perplexity. I know that's blasphemy. What is the average price that Buffett bought Oxy at? Maybe I wanted to use Sonnet. Maybe Opus uses too many credits. I love Opus though. See, an average of about where it is right now. But like, I imagine, especially with the direction of energy, that will show to be a good thing over time.
I'm wondering, with the level of AI tech these days, couldn't you just put like all of Buffett's history into a whatever Claude or something, and Greg Abel could literally have Buffett forever, and his investing style, his philosophies, his principles? Like, will companies look to do that if you have like a generational talent as a CEO? Can they keep using their like philosophies, their management styles beyond them?
No, it's not like that.
So,
Um,
so the pressure is on for Greg Abel to make his imprint, or no? Do you think he won't? He won't
so
feel that
so
pressure?
there's a concept in like predictive technologies that's always especially relevant. It's always relevant to me when I'm making models. And that concept is called out of sample data, right? And it's this idea that no matter how well you train something, whenever new information comes into play, that might no longer be applicable, right? Or new information comes into play and new things are applicable, right? Like what Buffett did with the banks, for example, in, there's been various like, crises of liquidity, but in '08, when he figured out a structure, to, bail him out, that was a very safe investment. He did very well. Not a lot of people were raising their hand to do it at that moment, right? That's a really good example of like, that's not something that is in a lot of people's playbooks. I'm not sure. He's so good at understanding value and buying something at the very bottom, that a lot of people don't have courage to do, right? So, and if you think of like what he did and he invented with Geico, like he invented the idea of like investing float. We've talked about this before, like, but taking people's premiums and turning, investing them and making profits, as you sit on that money before payouts. Like before that wasn't really a thing. Now it's really commonplace, right? So yes, you could, but like for example, like that, like buy Geico, invest the float thing. That's kind of a one-time thing, right? He already owns Geico. He's got a big insurance play. Like it doesn't really do him any good. Like buying another insurance company doesn't really add anything to that. You got to constantly think about new ideas, and value investing is about constantly thinking about new ideas, new opportunities where value might have fallen. Um, and yeah, I mean, look at all the Apple he owns right now. I don't understand that, right? Maybe that'll prove to be right. Maybe I'm missing something in terms of like the longevity of Apple. Or maybe he just, maybe in terms of like tech plays, maybe he thinks there's going to be a big, downside to the market. And he thinks there's certainly an argument that if you need to be invested in something, Apple's probably safer than a lot of other tech stuff. So yeah, it's hard because being a good value investor like him, you have to constantly be thinking of new ideas. And here's the other thing too, and we talk about that all the time. The other thing that Buffett does, and what a lot of people don't realize about value investing, and what I always kind of criticize about it, is that um, uh, he's also helping to run the companies, right? And he, like, not only is he helping to run the companies, he has so much kind of panache that they have to listen to him. That's not necessarily true of a lot of other places, right? Or a lot of other people. Like, if Buffett tells you, is he's a shareholder in your company, he tells you what to do, it's very dangerous for you not to listen to him, right? Because he might pull out his investment. A lot of people might fall. You kind of have to listen to him. I don't know if cousin Greg has the same, clout. He might to a certain extent, but you always have to remember that being part of Buffett's benefit.
So NW did a follow-up on the water topic, looking at CWT and AWK tickers. Don't look great in Prospero. He said, I should probably just stock up personally at Costco since Altman posited that humans use as much energy and resources as AI. So I saw this recently, and we do have OpenAI topic, so we could get to that now since you brought that up. Following up on the OpenAI meta topic of the way they're being valued, OpenAI gave new projections about they are expecting $280 billion dollars in revenue roughly in 2030. So from the 13 billion they've done over the prior year from 2025, that's a 5-year CAGR of about 85% average on an annual basis. So growth. So crazy growth projections there. Did you see this headline from Altman George about the energy usage comparing AIs to humans? I don't think a lot of people like that comparison. Any thoughts on OpenAI and the recent headlines from Altman? I believe he was in India making these headlines.
Well, I think kind of the base problem with that comparison is that for that to actually offer us any like energy savings, we'd have to be getting rid of humans, right? Like that point, like it doesn't really matter that there's less, right? Because AI is kind of optional, right? And I would hope that humans are kind of mandatory, right? Like, unless we're talking about like, curbing births, like the population is growing or whatever, like, and I hope we're not talking about eliminating any of these existing population, but you never know with these like tech titans. But be like, yeah, we've got energy problems. We got to cut 30% of the bottom of society because it's the people that are using too much energy, not the AIs. But that's not a very good point, right? Because people's autonomy, like even in something having kids, right, is a need. Like AI, as much as they would like you to think that AI is a need, it's not a need, right? So that's a really, really dumb point. But one that I wouldn't expect Sam Altman to understand.
No, that's exactly said perfectly too. The way like how AI is optional and humans are like mandatory, and like putting them on the same playing field, it shows you his thought process though, and it's a little bit scary, because he's like leading, the biggest or one of the biggest AI players in the world. I don't know. you would probably have a good pulse. Do you think, like, because you seem to think differently the way you just spoke, from your conversations within the AI space, like where do people fall on the spectrum of thinking in what we're talking about now?
I think most people in AI that I talk to, uh, we all agree on one thing, that um, there need to be the right guidelines, right? The right limitations. Like where some people disagree is the extent that we can use those if they might like hamper innovation, right? And then I think there's the complete other thing, and this is where I think the most valid part is, where it's like I think part of people's um, reservations with regulations is that they think the government is incompetent and can't really accurately, have those regulations. And that's where I find, like, theoretically, like good regulations should only help, right? It shouldn't hamper innovation, right? Because a lot of the times, they exist to make sure things don't go bad, not to make sure, to push things in the right direction, right? It's like, um, I think a really good example is renewable energy, right? Like a lot of people would say that, not having renewable energy is the best thing and you shouldn't limit it. But there are plenty of countries that chose to invest in renewable energy, and have you know you know, strong outputs. And I mean, if you look at something like, if you even look at like what China is doing with EVs, right? They invested in, the right battery infrastructure, and obviously some of their manufacturing costs are cheaper, but like to a certain extent, Japan already pioneered this already, and one of the reasons that Japan can offer such high quality cars at cheaper prices is they pioneered automation, right? Like Japan isn't like known for poor worker treatment. So the point that I'm making is um, investing in the right kind of infrastructure. And if government has to push to get the right kind of infrastructure, you can certainly have profits and efficiency. A lot of the times in the US, it's talked about like, oh, it's profits, or it's like profits or efficiency, or profits or regulations, right? And that's just not true. You can optimize profits while also having regulations. You just have to have smart people working with industry. But unfortunately, what ends up happening is industry bowls over the government, and because it's easier for them not to change. And a lot of the times, if smart people in government are working with smart people in industry, they can actually find a way to make it more efficient. And sometimes that's the government subsidizing it. And I'm so tired of hearing that, you know, we don't have the money for things. I'm tired of hearing about it, right? Because we subsidize oil. So the idea that we can't subsidize renewables to a point where we can actually have um, energy that is, actually more efficient in the long term. A lot of the problems with renewables is we don't have the right scale, right infrastructure, to do it. And we already have these pipelines or whatever. But long term, it is more efficient. So that's where it's just like, we could have been subsidizing these renewables for a long time and had cheaper energy infrastructure now instead of subsidizing oil for all these years. So I'm always kind of tired of hearing that it's more expensive, we don't have the money. It's only more expensive if you operate in the framework of change isn't good, and business doesn't like change. But a lot of the times, change can be good, and change can be good on the long term. And I think that's not enough of a big enough part of the conversation, where it's just like you can invest in these things and they're ultimately cheaper, instead of just like throwing away these oil subsidy dollars. And a lot of the times, for everyone kind of complaining about, domestic, like, we don't have enough domestic manufacturing, blah, blah, blah. Like, we could have manufactured a lot of these renewable energy situations domestically, but instead, we've been handing out subsidies to foreign countries that produce oil. So some of these times, like, not even all of these thinking frameworks are cohesive. But, I'm always tired of that narrative that um, that we can't afford this or that, because a lot of the times it's that short-term thinking that puts us in this bad financial situation, because subsidizing oil doesn't put us in a good long-term situation. Subsidizing our own domestic energy production does.
Amazing thoughts there. Love it. I want to bring up Eli Lilly versus Novo Nordisk again on the stream, because we're seeing this continuation of how Eli Lilly goes up and Novo Nordisk goes down. And today is the perfect example where Eli Lilly announced that they are innovating their Zepbound delivery to patients. So currently, patients had to use a weekly one dose pen, but now there's going to be a single pen that gives you a month worth of doses and uses. So efficiency and ease of use there, and that sent them up about 5% today. And on the other end of the spectrum, you had Novo Nordisk. Bad data came out about their Wegovy versus Zepbound's drug, and they were down a lot, about 16%, and hitting a new low under $40 per share now. Beyond those two companies, if you can, feel free to discuss either one of them, but just the overall healthcare space with all the uncertainties, it seems like that would be one there you could project more with confidence of like people are going to spend on healthcare. Is that looking more interesting to you now as everything else is getting a little less clear?
Um, Yeah, it's kind of like, I think it's kind of hard. Anytime I look at Eli Lilly, which kind of the big knock against it was it kind of shrunk a bit in long-term upside. Um, but yeah, anytime I look at Eli Lilly, uh, I definitely get a bit concerned about, like, it's just up so high, right? And like that's why I don't want to bet either way, because Eli Lilly's like kind of up so high, but then you kind of look in the other direction and say that um and say that Novo Nordisk could be a rebound, right? If they come back. But like you're kind of betting on the situation to change versus stay the same. And that's a very difficult bet, right? Because you don't necessarily want to bet on the loser right now, like Novo Nordisk, right? But if you're betting on the winner, there's a lot more downside to it if the loser does have a good headline. So that's why we've been hesitant to get involved in that. And, like we always say, you might miss some opportunities that way, but I just don't like that setup. If there's a big winner and a big loser, and it's hard for me to wrap my head around betting on either of them. And the other thing that I would say is like, that also exists with um with what we're talking about on um like Nvidia and AMD. For a while, we liked an AMD better because there was more to catch up to the all-time high, right? And then it's a bit of a different situation, right? Because you actually, like, I would call Nvidia obviously the winner. I wouldn't necessarily call AMD the loser, but it's definitely more of the laggard, right? But there's definitely more opportunity in that situation where it looks like the winner and like the laggard are similarly priced, and you're just like, okay, like even though they're both like very priced close to their all-time high, because that laggard is priced very closely to Nvidia, like I feel like that might imply that Nvidia has more room up, or the way that we're betting, AMD has more room down. There's a lot of different ways to play that, but that's kind of how we look at that.
NW commented BMY has been doing very well in comparison to NVO. I think I noticed a lot of the legacy, like the Johnson and Johnsons, AbbVie's, all those companies, been relatively strong versus the overall market recently. Probably a bit of a safety trade there going on. There are a bunch of other earnings that are going on this week, George. I'm going to read through a list. You can hit on any that you are interested in. Your favorite, AMC, is actually reporting on Tuesday. Besides that, Home Depot, Salesforce, Snowflake, Block, CoreWeave, and someone also commented in the chat, Duolingo, to talk about. So any of those interesting to you? It's a lot of the stocks that have been beaten down, the software names. Um, Anything interesting?
Well, I see something interesting in Sage Tracker. Um, Only 22% of institutions are buying AMC now. Um, yeah, it's definitely interesting. Um, I mean, what's to say? It's just like it's in the bankruptcy spiral. Like, especially when I see that I've always been talking about. Like what and like unless they announce some new like some new revenue stream or some new way. I don't know if it's like virtual movie theaters. Like who the hell knows? But I am also noticing that more and more of um these uh movies are just like on Apple or whatever to rent. Like I feel like studio releases aren't like as big of a thing anymore. And that's like there was a lot of bad signs. That's another terrible sign for them, you know?
Well, as LLMs progress and get more rights, they're going to need breaks from all the work they do. They're going to need content to watch, but they're not going to be going to the theaters, I guess. Just kidding.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
NW brought up ABVX, bringing us back to healthcare about how Prospero highlighted it and the healthcare effect of it. But yeah, right. You're still feeling good about ABVX. I saw we've been commenting
still
about them a
feeling good
lot.
about it. Holding, yeah. Like we cut some other things in our portfolio. We're still holding ABVX. Um, but yeah, I mean, we're just kind of waiting on that deal to come through or some information on their phase 3 trial. But yeah, definitely feeling good about it.
I'm curious. Are you ready to put the nail in the coffin on companies like Duolingo? Like, has AI actually progressed to the point where it's easy? Like, you could clearly see how companies like Duolingo, I see Adobe is down day after day. Like, those companies, they're not actually going to be by the dips, and they're actually like being wiped away by AI. Like, are you ready
I
to
mean,
like
I
fully say
think
that?
it's kind of the same problem that we've been talking about, right? And um, that problem is, uh, it's hard to bet either way, right? Like, I definitely have a hard time. Um, I have a hard time wrapping my head around, oh, is there going to be a rebound? Because it does look dark, and it does look like even good reporting, people have just like lost faith in the companies, and that's never good, right? But a good earnings report for any of these companies could have them shoot up. Um, so it depends, like, and this is where I'm just like, if people have a view on these kind of things, go for it. I don't personally have a view. Um, but yeah, what I would say about this kind of thing is, um, do you know, like, do you have an instinct whether Duolingo is going to have an impressive earnings, right? If you think it's overblown how fast things have like accelerated down and they might do well, right? If you have a view on that, then go for it. Otherwise, I'd stay away.
So, an interesting follow up on our coverage of gold and its climb. It was recently reported that gold has now overtaken the US dollar as the largest global reserve asset. And this is when you compare the foreign held gold to the US treasuries. So, gold has climbed to 4 trillion, and US treasuries held in foreign countries are about 3.9 trillion. So, I guess it explains the rally in gold, foreign countries buying it up and holding, about 10% of the global gold market cap on their balance sheets. But how does this affect the stock market, the US dollar going forward, our economic system? Is there like real risks of this trend continuing? And what if foreign countries continuing to sell the US dollar? Could that have negative, like really negative consequences on the stock market? Or do you see this trend kind of balancing off now that we've made a big move recently?
No, I mean, I think it's a big risk, not necessarily to the stock market, right? Because a weaker dollar could actually make um, stocks more appealing, right? Obviously, if it's falling, that's not good either. But yeah, like the problem is like companies and companies that are like, they have dollars and they're, purchasing, inputs, whether they be raw materials or, um, or, uh, or, even like, products that we buy are going to be, if there's tariffs, and then also a weakening dollar that makes things more relatively expensive, that's like our money's just going less far, right? Our real purchasing power. And if that happens, it basically means that effectively there's less spending, right? If your dollars can't go as far, then there's less spending, and it will affect the stock market in that way for sure, right? It's essentially like, between tariffs and a declining dollar, you're basically meaning like, if tariffs are 15% and, the dollar declines 10%, essentially you might be looking at 25% less spending power. And that's obviously not good for anything.
So I have one more topic to go through today. One call out to everybody that's viewed. Thank you guys for tuning in and watching the whole stream. Drop a like if you haven't yet, but also get in any last questions, comments, concerns in the chat that we can go through. This one, I'm bringing it back to the start. We're going back to Google. So I'm wondering, is Google like the most durable, almost like an ETF in itself, as like it kind of owns the AI and tech ecosystem. So when you go through it, Google owns about 14% of Anthropic. Obviously, they have their own Gemini and AI tech in themselves. You called them the best AI brain in the past. They own 8% of SpaceX. They have one of the leading cloud players. They have full self-driving. They have Google Maps. They have YouTube. It seems like every area that people are excited about, obviously their ads as well, they touch. So is there any company that you can name over Google as being like the most durable business in the world, or would Google claim that title?
Um, the most durable business in the world. No, I mean, I think I think Amazon is the most durable business, right? Just because, like, it's just their infrastructure and what they sell, right? It would be so hard. If you think about, like, there was a very real threat to search. Like, it didn't end up amounting to anything, and obviously Gemini came back, like, but I don't think search is immune. I don't think what Amazon has is immune, but it's just like, there was that big article that came out that Amazon didn't even offer the cheapest prices on things, and nobody really cared, right? Because Amazon's just like so convenient. Like, I think that's the biggest moat of anything, just like Amazon deliveries. And then they're obviously going to be able to, use other things with that moat. Like, if you even think about like what happened like with Prime Video, um, that wasn't much of anything at the beginning, but they get you in their ecosystem, right? And this has happened to me. They get you in their ecosystem, you use Prime Video, all of a sudden like you want to watch some movie on like that's like an MGM plus movie, and like you just like add that and they get more revenue from you like right in there, where you're just like, well, maybe I want another MGM plus movie, and then I'm just like paying for that, right? And I never even thought I would use Prime Video. Like, I just am a Prime customer, and they just like get you into their ecosystem. And it's the same thing with like buying movies, right? I used to buy movies in other places, but like it's just so easy. They have every movie in the ecosystem. I'm already in that app. I'm already using it. That's like the perfect example of how they just like kind of like got their tentacles in, because you use the app, you use Prime, right? Um, I think that's a really good example right there of just how they can like use that customer base to just get you sucked into other things.
Mm-hmm. And W said Amazon things are more expensive and don't ship as quickly anymore, he's saying. But nobody's switching away, I guess, no matter what, it seems like.
I still love it. It's just so
uh,
easy. It's so easy because of like the product reviews. That's like the most important thing for me. Is it's just like the reviews are right there and so easy.
Hmm. They actually, when you think about it, they kind of own like internet shopping because like you never go to like a company's page to buy something. You just go to Amazon and look for that company's product on Amazon. So it's like they
Yeah.
are, yeah.
Like, and it's just so much easier, right? Because it's like it's got the reviews there, and like even if you think about um even if you think about, right, this idea of um this idea of I mean, the returns are so thing, but like going to a website, and like a website always like has like, oh, these are reviews, but you don't know it's that website. Like I can't trust it. Like that's another thing that's just like so much easier in Amazon. And like now, like pretty much anything I can search like has thousands of reviews, and people are like, well, you still don't know. I was like, maybe I don't know, but it's still like those thousands of reviews are still better than not having thousands of reviews. Like what's the alternative? Like, yeah, you can like, some people love like Wirecutter. New York Times is like product review, and like I like it too. I'll look for like Wirecutter like sometimes as like the tip of the spear for me. But sometimes I go and I review, like I look at something on Wirecutter and I see the reviews and they're not that good, right? So it's like even though I'm using Wirecutter, I'm still using Amazon as an extra point of confluence, and like yeah, I just think it's way better.
So we are at the top of the chat for questions, comments. We'll be doing any switchover today, Prospero Lab?
No, no switchover today.
No switchover. So thank you everybody for tuning in. If you are tuning in from the Northeast, as you can see behind George, you guys got to stay warm, stay safe. Hopefully everybody's power stays on. We shall see.
It's
It's very windy out
crazy.
there too.
It's crazy out there. I've never seen like I'm supposed to leave this Friday, and I hope I can.
Yeah. Oh
Get the
my
hell out of
gosh.
here.
Hopefully by Friday.
San
But
Diego is my first stop.
all right, everybody.
Hopefully
Thank you
it's
for
not
tuning
cold
in.
there.
Thank you, George. We will see you all back Wednesday, 3 p.m. For another great stream. But until then, everybody, take care.